from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. Welcome back, or welcome if you are new here. Each week, I take a couple minutes to talk about our weekly newsletter. This is for those of you who can't handle another newsletter in your inbox. You're just too busy, you don't have the time to read. So I'm going to talk about the articles I included, the reason I chose them, what are some of the industry trends that I'm seeing out in the world. This particular week, the November 19th, 2025 newsletter is all about the IAAPA Expo here in Orlando, International Association of Amusement Park Professionals, Amusement Parks and Attractions, IAAPA. This is an organization I first got connected to a couple of years ago, and last year, 2024, was the first year that I attended the IAAPA Expo. I am back again this year. The conference takes place here in Florida, Orlando, and it's a really excellent exhibition and opportunity to connect with other recreation attraction professionals. I've been here since Saturday, and so the very start of the newsletter each week always has the little op-ed, and in it, I've shared my experiences a little bit this week, including attending the inaugural Water Park Day. We were at H2O Island and Volcano Bay. I shared some links to the photos that I posted on our Instagram account. Then further in the week, I've been participating in a variety of brand events, as well as meeting up, networking, attending education sessions, and walking the trade show floor. As a Canadian, I often get asked by other Canadians, why do I go to the US for these conference and conventions, especially in the current political climate? And the reality is, in my personal opinion, there's no better way to stay connected to the aquatic industry, the commercial aquatic industry, than with these in-person meetups. It's only through places like the IAAPA Expo, which is every year in November, the World Water Park Association Conference, which is every year in October, or any of the other commercial pool trade shows, whether it is the Northeast Pool and Spa Show in Atlantic City in January, Southwest Pool and Spa Show, Florida Under the Sun Show, the pool show in California and Long Beach. The brands are not coming to me in Calgary. I can't expect anyone else to do my job but me. And so that is where I invest significant time, money, and resources to come to these shows, to do the networking, to seek out brands that I'm interested in learning more about their products, and also to be able to identify trends well in advance of their arrival in Canada. That's why you subscribe to this newsletter. That's why you place your trust in me to showcase on Instagram, on Facebook, here on YouTube, the things that you need to be aware of coming down the pipe. Those don't happen on their own. That happens through the diligence every day of reading Google News alerts, reading trade publications, magazines, newsletters, reading widely, and consolidating that information every week into this newsletter. So although we try and keep the newsletter at 1,100, 1,200 words, we try and showcase a variety of articles and topics. These in-person trade shows are extremely valuable. I cannot underscore how valuable they are in terms of seeing what's out there in the real world. So that is basically the beginning of the November 19th newsletter. As always, you can read the full newsletter. It will be linked in the description box down below. And subscribing, liking, sharing, cross-promoting is always appreciated because all of these resources are provided to you completely free of charge. We always feel it's really important here at Lakeview Aquatic Consultants to serve before selling, but that doesn't undermine the number of hours, the dollars, and the time that it does take to put these resources together. So we do appreciate you being here, but do also know that there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to produce all of this content and valuable information. The other thing I shared in the newsletter today is that I really do want to encourage people to really think about what things are you saying no to out of habit, out of routine, subconsciously, without even really critically assessing. We're starting to see a lot of requests for procurement from other countries, non-US countries. We're starting to have lots of questions about alternative retailers, alternative suppliers, alternative products, software, different ways to solve the same problems than maybe we've recommended in the past. And that's always going to be the case in terms of shifting interests, shifting budgets, shifting landscape of products. But that is also where it does require time and effort to stay on top of being competitive and knowing what's out there, not just the easiest thing to purchase and not just the most obvious thing to purchase. I always want to encourage pool operators. Yes, we do not want to reinvent the wheel. Yes, we are all stretched for time, resources, but there is also it's really important to critically assess the decisions that we're making and not just to keep buying from the same provider or to keep using the same product if we continue to have problems in our day-to-day pool operations. There may be an alternative out there that does better fit our budget, our needs, etc. And so that was another consideration that I want to remind you not just to say yes to something that you've always said yes to. Each week in the second half of the newsletter, we share a variety of news articles pertaining to the swimming pool industry. I do very much try to diversify these articles because not everybody is super into water safety and drowning prevention like I am as a former lifeguard and swim instructor. However, this week I have to say that the bulk of the articles do pertain to water safety and drowning prevention. That is simply just how the cookie crumbled, so to speak, in terms of what the news was this week. So I'm going to read a variety of the news article headlines, but I'm not going to get into each one because for a lot of you, this is not the main focus of your day-to-day work. That said, it is important to kind of know what's out there. And so that's why I do include the ones that I do in the newsletter. Please know there's always dozens and dozens of incidents each week that we don't have the space to include. Unfortunately, we do have to be critical and we discount the most routine, albeit tragic, water safety, drowning incidents, drowning fatalities, water related injuries. We have to keep it, unfortunately, the cases that are particularly unique. And so the first one from this particular week that really, really horrified me as something that I hadn't previously considered was a boy who experienced a drowning in Australia at a model home with a residential pool, which was definitely a new fear that I unlocked because it had never occurred to me that, I mean, what are the odds a small child goes with their family to tour a show home and then experiences submersion? But it is something to consider, right? New show home may not have a pool fence. Other articles we included this week, there were two good news stories. One was pertaining to twin swim instructors who are 80 years old, as well as an older couple who got married on their local YMCA pool deck because they met in aqua fitness class. But the rest of the articles this week are somewhat depressing. They're articles such as a incident where a father and son drowned at a beach where there were no warning signs. There was a article pertaining to a man who pled guilty to cruelty after his grandson drowned in the pool. A woman who pled guilty. She was charged with she was sentenced to 6 to 9 years in prison pertaining to a toddler drowning death. Emily Kieser is back in the news this week. She is starting to talk more about her own personal experience with her son Trig's drowning fatality in hospital fatality earlier this year. I hesitate to keep coming back to her, but I do think that this is a news story that people are talking about and may be in your sphere of influence in terms of outside of aquatic work. There were some tourists who drowned in Tenerife, pertaining to a quote rogue wave, ocean conditions. I think we can do better in water safety and drowning prevention in terms of talking about the ocean is not regulated, the ocean is not predictable. When you walk along the coastline, when you walk near rocks, coastal waters, there's always a risk that there are large sudden waves or waves you were not anticipating who could come up and draw you into the ocean if you're not prepared. There is a family in Florida fighting for stricter rules pertaining to pool features after their daughter she experienced a drowning fatality in what's being described as a quote kind of whirlpool turbulence that occurred where there was multiple water features kind of aggregating at one location in the pool that may have made it hard for her to surface. We shared an example of a young father who remains in coma after a near drowning, which is the imprecise language, incorrect, outdated language. If you experience a submersion, there is a form of drowning, but it's not a fatal drowning. Often the layperson does not understand that these drownings also lead to significant injury. And there is the reality that people, they end up spending a lot of time in hospital injured because of these circumstances. They may not be able to return to regular activities of daily living because of their situation. We also shared a terrible story about Calgarian, a father and daughter who died in California. The daughter was pulled out into the ocean due to a similar walk along the coastline. The father jumped in after her. The father's body was recovered, but the little girl's body was not recovered until much later by a rescue diver under similar circumstances, like very, very tragic circumstances. We shared a classic YouTube video. Some of you might remember this was a few years ago during the pandemic. The dad who almost does a Superman over the backyard pool fence when his son gets into trouble swimming. It's an amazing, amazing video if you have the opportunity to click and watch. And then we shared a few other articles in the newsletter pertaining to some op-eds where people are suggesting to get local businesses involved in operating their local community pool. The amalgamation of, well, maybe it's not yet an amalgamation, but two particular pool magazines, Pool and Spa News, as well as Aquatics International, have been acquired by Kenilworth Media, who does some other pool magazines. Pool and Spa Marketing, I believe, is the one owned by Kenilworth. So unfortunately, I think it's likely we're going to see some consolidation. There's a lot of pool magazines. Respectfully, they don't have particularly different angles except for maybe Pool Pro and then maybe some aspects of Aquatics International that cover the lifeguard and commercial side of things. I will be curious to see in the next 5 years what that landscape looks like for pool trade publications, especially in the current climate in 2025, where publication in general is quickly dwindling. Books, magazines, newspapers, right? Publication rates, journalism is rapidly changing. So I don't think the pool industry is going to be any different. For now, the editor says nothing's going to change, but I'm not sure I believe that long term. There may be a 1 or 2 year period where things remain static, but thereafter we'll just have to wait and see. So unfortunately, most of the newsletter this week was pertaining to water safety and drowning prevention in terms of news articles. I did share down at the bottom that there is a quick reminder that our last certified pool operator class on Zoom of 2025 is coming up very quickly. I'm sorry to keep harassing you, but each year we've had a lot of frantic emails over later in December and January, a period when I traditionally do not teach much. I like to take some nice time off. We want to make sure that everyone who needs training, who has the budget dollars, is able to get into a class as soon as possible for the end of the year or later in January 2026. As always, if you have several people, upwards of 6 to 10 people that you're looking to train, you can always reach out to me about a private class, either in person or online via Zoom. There are other options potentially if you're not able to register in our last class of the year, which is December 8th to 11th. But we do want to make sure that people have that heads up to make a decision whether they're doing training in 2025 or 2026. Then lastly, at the very bottom of the newsletter, we have 2 YouTube videos. I'm trying to catch up on releasing all of the backlogged content that we've got. So we had one particular discussion piece that I shared about the Life Saving Society Rescue Aid Position Statement. This is very important if you are a lifeguard in a Life Saving Society region or affiliate branch, in terms of what is the right aid that you can use as a lifeguard. Spoiler alert, it's not required that it be a lifeguard tube in Canada the way it may be in some parts of the US. And then I also shared a video that goes back to a project I was doing earlier this year, and how with every client that we work with every new pool that we permit, with every consulting project, basically, we always learn new things. And what were some specific learnings from that earlier this year permit project that we were involved with here in Alberta. So that is it for this week. I appreciate you being here. We're still playing around with the format of these live recordings of the newsletter. I'm not going to sit here and read the newsletter to you, but on the flip side, some people have said, list all of the articles. Some people have said, can you talk more about why these stories matter? So we're still working that out. Each week might sound a little bit different. Each week, the production quality might be a little bit different. We're still struggling with some of those details, but thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sticking with it sticking with us as we stick with it. I appreciate you being here. I don't take it for granted. I know your time is precious, and that the fact that you hit play when you had many, many other things you could watch or listen to, I never take that for granted. Thank you so much, and we will see you in the next video. Bye for now.